On Sunday, March 9th, 2025, I posted Anachronism 4637 to the Anachronisms blog. It's called Suspension slash Disbelief. After the willing suspension of disbelief we supposedly get when watching fictional productions. I suppose I see works of cinema, stage, and television much more often in aggregate as a critic, not as what seems to me the more typical audience member. I have no problem with this, much as I understand the necessity of relating somehow to the characters and the story and of believing in the whole thing or giving yourself into the world of the work of art, whatever it is. This that I am relaying to you mostly is just pretending to be a poem. Although a poem I write is one that I say is a poem. That seems the only determining factor for me, which is pretty convenient and debatably lazy. Anyway, this again is just an observation or a set of them which I appreciate this afternoon for what I feel is its lack of poetry. A bunch of words cast in a very low-budget production and a piece that was with such flourishes as enjambment, as costume, and a virtual page, the set, to have it be pretending or acting as if a poem. I like to think about the difference between assimilated facts like this pretending to be a poem versus something I write, believing in the poem of it all as I write it. But there is no real difference in the ways I describe, given that, in my mind, simply to dub something one writes a poem is to make it one. These are simply facts for me. The way in which I live them, and with simplicity and ease placed upon the page, thrown into it as I type the words, read through, reread, make all of whatever flourishes I do to add the pretense of poetry. And with regard to my participation in these art forms as critic and or audience member, this is my way to differentiate for you, as I do not often think of myself while watching movies or television or dramatic productions as floating, as I obviously do, between most often a critic, wondering as I watch how it has been made, how that creation either turns me on or off, and why. Thinking about the artistry and effort of many individuals and the vastly different role each had in the creation of what I'm watching. But I am aware that I do this, that I'm most often evaluating in a bit of traditionally critical way. Not as audience member, but with curiosity regarding each part of the collaboration, actively assessing each and all of as the piece unfolds. But also sometimes getting just caught in its world, that original appeal of immersing myself in the other worlds, utilizing each piece as if it were not really a means of escape as much as a way to get an education about an art form or art itself or the history of humankind. I've become aware of these simultaneous and back and forth ways of experiencing. It has become integral to my life. These two ways of experiencing the art forms. And this is a way of being that I'm happy with, that does me well, in my opinion, and I cannot imagine dispensing with one or the other of the experiencing of such things. But I do clearly spend most of my time, I believe, outside of the story, as it is in progressing, hovering over it, so as to obsess and assess and relish each and every part made by each and every individual, seen and unseen, that altogether make a work of art, as they are lived. But what I can say is I'm thrilled to be on either side, so I float around as critic and audience participant sometimes simultaneously, be more often probably focusing more on one or the other, that is, either concentrating wholly on the world itself and feeling within that world, or as a critic noting each part that has gone into it, observing and making assessments, placing scores, and making my little arguments to justify whatever I think I know or see based on these observations. I think I should leave it at that. These words I've written about how I am when I watch cinema, television, or stage production, so as to leave this dudded up actor of a pretend poem more statement and less opinion, less a poem than a taking up of the airwaves or of your time to tell you something of me without leaning on bias and such. So there.